AJ with Dope from the Day. I'm here with Jaleel. He's an award-winning photographer with PPA and WPPI. Uh, Jaleel, could you tell us a little more about your background?
Thank you for having me, AJ, first of all. I appreciate you having me on your platform.
Yes.
Ooh, okay, that just came through. Let me put this here on silence for now. So I am a photographer based out of Philadelphia, on the East Coast. My motto is "Have wheels, will travel," though, so I do get around as much as possible. I shoot primarily portrait and street photography, though, whatever can get, get a little bit of extra coin in the pocket is always a good thing. So, keeping myself as versatile as possible. So I have shot some commercial stuff and some production stuff as well. Let me see. I am also a Pro Photo ambassador, Legend of Light. And so that's pretty awesome. I'm a speaker and teacher. And pretty much I love what I do within the creative space.
How did you begin your creative journey?
I don't have, it's funny, man. Whenever I get that question asked, I don't have a direct aha moment where things kind of made sense. It's just one of these things where it kind of landed and happened because I feel as though I've always dove into some type of artistic field in some form or another. So, originally, I went to school for computers, which was cool. And I enjoyed, working on computers and administrative stuff like that. But ultimately, I found out that my biggest issue was that I wasn't much of a desk jockey, which is kind of weird because pretty much now when you're a photographer, you're pretty much a desk jockey in post production.
Yes.
But then I went to school for video production and I enjoyed that. But finding jobs in the Philadelphia area, I found to be very difficult, especially having people to trying to get people to overlook your disability in relations to what you're actually capable of. And so I found that to be difficult. But throughout all of those things, I still had photography as my primary go-to. So I've always done photography in some form or another, mostly as a hobby. And then one day I went out with a friend of mine to shoot some video of a guy that that he had introduced me to. And he had a photo shoot, and the photographer, she showed up with her camera and her one light. And I saw the results and I said to myself, if she can do it, I can do it. And so I set a bar that was pretty high for myself at the time, considering I had no money and not quite as much experience doing portrait work as I probably would have liked. But I set the bar so that I can go out here and strive. The hope was that if I was good enough, people would not, people wouldn't care about the wheelchair nearly as much. But I think that I've come to terms with the idea that like, I can't remove one or the other. I can't remove myself, nor can I remove my wheelchair. So it's a combo deal. And I think it's also the thing that's gotten me to where I'm at right now and allowed me to see the way I see.
Yeah, exactly. I first saw you on photo with Jared Paula. He did an interview with you a couple years ago, and it opened my eyes to see that there were more people out there trying to do what I personally am trying to do.
Absolutely. And what's so funny is like even still like I'm discovering that there are still more people out here who are doing it and they're very good at what they do as well. It's just that, within a creative space, you would think that someone with a disability is kind of like the fairy. It's that thing that, you don't see enough of. But I think because of the way art is perceived and viewed, you don't really look at, I want to say, the abilities of the artist as much as the talent of the artist. So, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, in an odd way, you got people who are buying paintings from an elephant and a dog that can paint. And, not to equate the two, but like it's very interesting just to see from that perspective that, like, you didn't think that someone else who you take for granted wouldn't have similar interests.
So, when clients first meet you and they at first do not know you're in a chair, what are some of the reactions after you've shown them your work and your process?
It's very honestly, at this point, it's very rare for a client to come to me and not know that I'm in a chair.
Yes, but I'm
Um,
saying when you were first starting out,
I only ever had, that I know of. I need to preface this, that I know of. I've only ever had one client who refused to even take a meeting with me once they knew I was in a wheelchair. Um, and truthfully, I had to come to terms with that, with the fact that I'm going to have those situations. And you don't have to be in a wheelchair, realistically, or have a disability
yes,
for someone to not want to work with you for whatever reason that they deem that they don't want to work with you. I just think that at the end of the day, they weren't my client, because ultimately it's the talent that outwins, not my disability. And clearly I've got things in place that help me and facilitate me to be able to produce the talent, the type of work that I do, that made you interested in the first place. And if someone can't take and understand that, then, as I said, they're not my client.
what are some tools that you use to open people up that may be nervous when stepping in front of your camera?
um well, those types of things are mostly personality. You know what I mean? Like for me, it's conversation. Sometimes I'll say some off-colored stuff just to get a reaction, calm people down. Usually, it's about conversation too, and positioning. And just getting people comfortable is the most important thing, regardless of anything when you're dealing with that, because it's a difference between being behind the camera and being in front of the camera. And uh, as a photographer, sometimes it can be uncomfortable being in front of the camera, especially when you have your own insecurities that you deal with subconsciously. So it can be fun, and it helps you better. I want to say it helps you better communicate what you need and want from your client when you've kind of put yourself in that position.
What's been your hardest or your most challenging uh, assignment or job that you've done so far?
Hmm. I want to say almost every job is challenging and every job is taxing to a certain degree, because for me, unfortunately, I'm a chronic overthinker.
Me,
And
me too.
so, and there are times when you have to realize that you got to let go and you have to be you in order to do the job.
Yeah.
And, one job I had did, I did for a major company, and it didn't go quite the way I wanted to. And a lot of the problems that came were because it was my first time working with this company. There were things that I needed to know that I didn't know that were supposed to be provided to me. But ultimately, the buck stops with me, and that I played it. I feel as though I also played it a little too safe, because it was it was such a great opportunity. I didn't shoot the way Jaleel would shoot. I shot super safe, and that was problematic. And I think that came back to bite me to a degree. Do I think I did a good job? I think I did a decent job, but maybe not as good of a job as what the client wanted. But there's a lesson to be learned in those kinds of situations, and being honest and open with those things has with other photographers has put me in a position to understand that I'm not the only one who's ever been put in that position where you're working with somebody and things don't go the way you thought that they were.
Yeah.
So that would be one of the most challenging things. It's just when you think things are going good and they're not really. But you don't know that until after everything is said and done.
Do you find Philadelphia in the area you live in to be accessible, or what are some uh, things they could improve upon?
I think Philly, in all honesty, is probably one of the better accessible cities. Now, obviously, there's a long way to go as far as accessibility. My mindset is that what you do for the least of us, you do for the most of us. And so when you deal with making things accessible for those in need, you ultimately find that those who don't seem like they have a need find the solution to what they didn't know there was a problem. So case in point, curb cuts. There's so many people who now utilize curb cuts, not just people with disabilities. You got people who are elderly who use them. You have mothers and families who utilize them, delivery folks who use them. So now it's become more than just something for people with disabilities to be able to get on and off a curb and cut across the street. With that said, having been able to get out of the States a few times, there's a long way to go, versus what I've seen some other places putting in place and making work, so that it's not harder to live your life, but easier to live your life, if that makes sense.
What is one place that you've traveled to that has, in your opinion, done it correctly?
There's no correct. Let me make sure I make that clear. Everyone's still learning, and the thing about it is that there were just some systems that were put in place that seem to make sense. You know what I mean? It's more so that things seem to make sense versus just being overly correct. And in truth, a lot of the systems here in America are very old. When we talk about our infrastructure, we haven't invested in infrastructure for quite some time. And so it needs a drastic overhauling versus some other countries that have invested into their infrastructures or have invested in people. So case in point, I went to the UK a few years ago. And, it was amazing that once I got off the plane, I had like hands-on assistance to get to where I was going from the plane to basically until I got off the next train. And one of the cool things about it was that, I had somebody wait with me to catch the train that I needed. They put me on a specific spot. There was somebody waiting for me at that same spot on that same train to get me off, who assisted me to get to my next train, and so forth and so on. And it was just amazing to kind of like, get that feeling to see where, that you had the assistance there. And that was amazing. Now you ask somebody from the UK what they think, and they'll tell you it's absolutely garbage. but they live it. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
so for me,
Yes.
like I find it to be like, super, super convenient. I went to Australia a few years ago. And in Australia, in certain places, if you have a disability, if they don't have accessible public transportation, if I'm not mistaken, they will actually pay for your cab ride to where you need to go.
Wow.
So yeah, so it's certain things that are just put in place that seem to make sense. Now, mind you, all these things are new things that are starting to come into play. Like, in Australia, you got trains that like you can get on relatively easy. Now, is it super accessible in the sense of ADA accessible? No, but I would gladly take a steep ramp that still allows me to get on a train versus no ramp whatsoever. And that's what I faced. It was a little hard getting up the ramps and, picked up a lot of speed going down it. But guess what? There was not one station that I can think of off the top of my head that I couldn't get on or off at.
And that's good to know for anyone that's traveling out of state or out of country, that there are options like that.
Absolutely. You just have to plan ahead is what I'm horrible at. But you know, but if you plan ahead, there's a lot of places that you can go. And even getting assistance to a certain degree in certain countries is actually a lot cheaper than you realize. I mean, realistically, you can pay somebody like, 20, 30, $40 for a week to be there to purely just to assist you. And while that doesn't sound like a lot of money, and as far as like conversion, that's a lot more money than some places, some people will see in a given month or year,
Yes.
a couple months,
Yes.
depending on where you're going, you know, so you have a lot of those kinds of opportunities, same idea of hiring an interpreter or something like that.
Yes. How do you think uh, cameras and creativity tools have changed and became more accessible for people with disabilities?
Um, I would say you said cameras, right?
Or creative tools just
Um,
in general, or cameras?
I mean, the creative tools, the beautiful thing about it is that we live in a wireless age to a degree. And
Yes.
so a lot of things that are now happening are becoming a lot easier to manipulate and utilize. So, one of the cool things is like, um, I love playing video games, won't lie. Sometimes I play them way more than I probably should. Um, Microsoft developed an accessible controller for their systems that you can plug and play and adapt in so many number of ways. So you have accessible, so you can, gamers with disabilities can and they be a part of the gaming community in ways that they never imagined. And be competitive at it, not just play for the sake of playing, but actually be competitive.
Exactly.
And it's the same thing even with gear. I mean, like, you think about it, now you can Wi-Fi into cameras with your, to control things. So, there's been times where certain views were inaccessible to me. So now I have, I might use like a boom pole, and I can hold the camera up and then I'll Wi-Fi into my camera, my phone, and utilize my phone as a shutter. So you have those types of situations. The ability to attach certain things a lot easier, more lightweight mods to your wheelchair that allow you to take your camera with you on a go on a regular basis, and or have it positioned a certain way so that you don't have to worry about the weight for those who may have balance issues or the inability to hold heavy objects for long periods of time.
I I attach mine to a tripod that I hook to my wheelchair.
And that works very well for you, I take it.
Yes, I've been doing it since 2005.
See, and I'm sure there's some more things that you probably didn't think of that you can also do to give you more mobility with the camera instead of just having the tripod. I mean, like you think about it, they've got these dolly game, the jib arms that you can now move around. And you imagine having a jib arm, a short one, attached to your wheelchair that now allows you to make the camera go higher than you or all the way down to the ground. And so you can shoot up or down. So these are things like these are other little things that are possible. The only unfortunate thing about a lot of the things that come that are supposed to help people with disabilities is that they come with a huge price tag, which, if we're being honest, government's not trying to pay for. And most of us live in a state of poverty due to our health needs more than anything. So we're, always between a rock and a hard place in relations to living our life to the best of our ability and versus, skating that line between not earning enough, but maintaining our benefits. And it's amazing. And the only reason why I even say this now is because, I have recently seen, there was a video on YouTube about disabilities in Japan, and it came from a question of someone else who asked like how somebody else lives in another country. And they specifically mentioned Japan. And it was amazing that in Japan, you're basically paying 10% of the cost for most everything you do. And I'm like, 10%? I would gladly give up everything if I only had to deal with 10% of my overall costs.
Wow.
Everything. So that means that no matter what I do, no matter how much money I make, if I needed anything, I'm only going to be responsible for 10% of that. How liberating would that be?
So liberating. I couldn't even tell you how liberating that would be for my life, and I'm sure many others.
Exactly. And and they even have what they call them helpers, which is actually a kind of more interesting name for aids instead of a aid. They're a helper, and that's literally what they do. And the way it's set up is that each I can't make it out the word. I always get so tongue tied with this. Each municipality is independent in relation to that. So no matter where you move, all you have to do is check in with the municipality, and you can get a helper come out to help you out with your everyday needs. And it would depend on how much you need, would depend on how much time you have and things like that. But it's still just the idea that like it's just so seamless. And this is what I mean when I say there's some places that are doing some things a little bit better. Without getting too much on my political horse. But the way things here are done is that if there's not a dollar attached, it's really not done, and that's unfortunate.
Yes, it is. What what projects are you working on now that you can tell us about?
I currently have a project that it's still early in its infancy, but I put it out into the world, and I need to push it a little bit more. But basically, I want to start doing portraits of children and people who were injured as children through gun violence. They don't necessarily have to have a disability. What I ultimately want to do is photograph the scars and kind of tell a little bit about a little of their story, just to get awareness out in relations to the responsibility that comes with being a gun owner. It's not an anti-gun piece. It's about responsibility and understanding that, like, when things happen and you make mistakes or things happen in relations to gun violence, when the news cameras go off, people still have to live. And for some people like you have an everyday reminder. I mean, in my case, I was shot at age 8. And, my constant reminder is my wheelchair. Before I go to bed, I got to get out of a wheelchair. And when I wake up, I've got to get in a wheelchair. And so, my life as nice as it seems, still has a whole lot of chaos in it that
Yes.
I can't forget and I can't get away from.
They,
And
they,
so it's got to be the same thing for others.
you can turn off, turn off and on like a light switch.
Right. Absolutely.
How do you plan on reaching out to organization,
Um,
organizations and or people to get your project accomplished?
right now, I'm reaching out to people, organizations. I've got to figure out what organizations I can tap into that may be of use in relations to um, partnering up and or using, utilizing with.
And how long do you think this process will take, or do you have a time, timeline?
I don't have a timeline for this. I got a feeling this is going to take a while. Remember what I said a little earlier. I suck at planning, so so this is going to take me some time, and I know it's going to take me some time, but I can't give up on it. I've been really bad about sharing my photos on social media within the last few years. And I mean, I've got photos for days, and I don't know why, but it just doesn't bring me the same joy that it used to when I post. Excuse me, when I posted photos. And that's not to say that I don't have people who are excited when I do post. It's just one of these things where sometimes, it just feels like it's a rat race, and maybe I shouldn't think of it like that, but it just does.
I think it, it'd be able to help a lot of people throughout your process of doing the project. So whatever I can do to help, I'd be happy to do so.
I appreciate that.
Sure. Uh, is there a way people can get a hold of you? I'm sure your website.
Yeah, they can go through my website. I'm also on Instagram at Jaleel King. That's JALEELKING. And on Facebook. And while I don't post a crap ton of photos on a regular basis, I
Yeah.
do respond to people who reach out to me. So if anybody wants to reach out, they're more than welcome to.
And what's the title of this project, or do you have one?
It's still a work in progress, but right now it's scars, but I got a feeling it's going to change, and when it clicks, it's going to click.
Yeah, the projects like that, they are powerful, stick with people. So I'm sure this project won't be any different.
Yeah.
Uh, what has been your favorite assignment? I know you photographed the Pope, or tried to photo, photograph the Pope when he was in Philadelphia a couple years ago.
That was a mess. I didn't even try with the Pope, man. That was such a mess for me. Yeah, oh man, that was such a mess. The Pope visit, man. I mean, like they don't even put this much crap out when the president comes to a city, so it's just crazy to see the amount of stuff they put out for the Pope, brother. And what was even crazier was that like a lot of things were put in place without any consideration for accessibility. So you had
Oh, boy.
like sidewalks and streets that were blocked in ways that like made it extraordinarily difficult for people with disabilities to get around. And then they would bitch and moan at you about you can't come this way. And it's like, yeah, but I can't get through your barrier. And it's just like that was just such a mess. But yeah, you know, I don't know, man. Like as far as projects are concerned, I think one of my favorite projects is my Behind Me series that I did, and it was just something that did on super random. And basically, when you take public transportation, and you're in a wheelchair, they sit you forward. And I've always wondered what happens behind me. And one day I took my little camera and I just put it above my head and pointed it backwards and just started taking pictures. And I loved the way the series looked so much that I just started doing it. I haven't done it in quite some time, but I think I need to pick that back up. But my poor little Sony RX100 got destroyed in the celebration when the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl, and I haven't replaced it since.
Oh,
So I need to replace, because that was just a great point and shoot camera. Whereas something, another camera, people are just going to be just so extra and
yeah,
aware. But I loved what I did with that, and
yeah.
so I would love to do that again. But that's why I think it's important for people to have personal projects, and they don't have to be like these big grand projects. It can be just something as simple as photographing your dishes. You know what I mean? Or the food that you let go to waste in your fridge.
Exactly.
I'm looking at myself. But you know what I mean? But photography can be whatever you want, and there's just so many different genres of things that you would be surprised that people would find interesting. And sometimes the most interesting projects are the ones that you never knew existed until you just became interested in something.
We all need to become interested in something, no matter what it is.
Absolutely agree.
What
Absolutely agree.
what does diversity mean to you? Like, what does "don't burn the day" the phrase mean to you?
Repeat the second part of that again for me.
What does "don't burn the day" the phrase mean to you?
Don't burn the day.
Yes.
I've never heard that one. Don't burn the day. As far as diversity is concerned, I think diversity just comes about from being able to tell a wide range of stories. I think that in some capacity, we have it wrong in relations to what diversity really is. Now that I think about it everyone has a voice and everyone has a different unique take on things. You know, case in point, two Black people can have two totally separate experiences that differentiate them, and it's the same for anybody. You can have a man and a woman who have very much so a shared life experience, even if they never, lived in the same town, but have very similar experiences. So diversity comes about when you're able to communicate and tell a story. Not only that, but also come to an understanding of people and things that you or yourself are not familiar with. It's just about being open-minded to things that you may not be comfortable sometimes. And I think that's the problem too, is that there's a lot of things that we're still not comfortable with that we have to have conversations about and with in order to understand and move forward. And so that we become more aware of what happens going forward versus feeling the blame game and pointing fingers at what we've done before or what we've all done in our past. So as far as don't burn the day, I do not know what that possibly could mean. Don't burn the day. I guess try to find something to do during the day. Make the most of your day would be the best way. Don't burn it where, you basically waste it.
That is the title of the podcast, and I think it is don't wait till tomorrow because we're not promised tomorrow.
I totally agree with you on that 100%.
Um, when when did you first pick up a camera?
It was in my 20s is when I first picked up a camera. Now, when I first picked up my first SLR, Yeah, that was still in my 20s, and I rocked out my Canon AE1 program for quite a number of years, and then I upgraded to a Canon AE1. I mean, not a Canon AE1, a Canon. Oh, why can't I get it out now? Elon 2E. That's what it was. And yeah, and I'm still shooting with film on occasion. So
Cool.
I have a Pentech 645N that I enjoy shooting with, and I also have a Bronica 645 ETRS that I'm playing with now. I wanted to start shooting, medium format, but I couldn't necessarily afford a digital medium format, so I got in where I could fit in, and by the time I'm done processing all my film and all the work that takes to get the stuff scanned, I probably would have been able to afford a damn digital medium format camera through I'm going.
Yeah. How many people are in your crew or go assist you on a shoot?
Not many. I usually go alone, unfortunately. And I think part of that is my fault for not being more open with asking for help. I think we have to be open with asking for help a lot more, and
So,
not look at it as being a negative thing.
in terms of that, how do you get your lights set up if no one's uh able to assist you?
Sometimes I will ask clients for help,
Okay.
and I've not had any issues with that. But I generally, when I know I have to set up lights and stuff like that, I generally try to have help on hand. So
Okay.
it also depends on how complicated the lighting setup is too. Sometimes it's not really um, that overly complicated as far as lights is
Yeah.
concerned.
I I'm lucky enough to have an assistant go with me to assignments. So that's how I handle that.
Oh, that's good.
But uh, that's all the questions I have. Uh, I'd like to thank Jaleel King for joining us. You can find his work at jaleelking.com. And do you have any uh, other events coming up? Like
No, not with the
speech?
Rona. Yeah, not with the Rona out right now. I'm limiting my. Rona has definitely put a tamper on some things for sure.
Yeah.
So so nothing right now.
Um, was WPPI virtual this year or was it camp? Okay.
No, they had WPPI this year. I elected not to go, mainly because I still was apprehensive about things.
Yeah.
But more importantly, Vegas in August just did not seem like a good choice in relations to heat.
No,
And
believe
so yeah,
believe me, it's not.
yeah.
I hope to get you down to Georgia eventually to do some work together.
Well, funny you say that. I will be in Georgia in January for a family thing, but let's see what we can figure out.
What what part?
Most likely Atlanta.
I'm an hour from Atlanta.
You an hour out?
Yeah.
Probably
I'm
figure out something.
okay. So
I missed you on the last ride, so we could probably figure out something.
yeah. Um how often are you in the area?
This is going to be my first time in Georgia,
Wow.
so it's something that I wanted to do, but I haven't done. So I'm kind of looking forward to it, even though it's, it's primarily a family event. I'm
Yeah.
still looking forward to basically doing and being there.
Well, I could show you some great photography spots
Definitely.
city-wise or whatever you would like to shoot. I'm down for.
Much appreciated. Well, hopefully we can make that happen.
Um, well, like I said, thanks for joining us. And uh, ladies and gentlemen, you can join me and my co-host at the Sixth Annual Cerebral Palsy Conference, October 1st and 2nd. Go to cerebralpalsyconference.org for more information. And we would like to thank our sponsors, Friendly Shoes, for their sponsorship, as always. And with that, we say, don't burn the day.